What's up, my good peoples? Welcome to the Be Transformed podcast, where we're talking about ideas that stimulate wholesome thinking into identity, purpose, vision, and action. I am James Anderson. With me is Carolyn and Aubrey, my good homegirls.
Homegirls.
What's happening?
Switched it up. We've taken over the guys.
It's true.
The women are taking over.
I'm about to get replaced, yeah.
I don't know about that one.
Oh, man. What's happening? Anything?
Life.
It's all happening.
Life is happening. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Stained a deck this week. Got our deck all stained, and
Stained it up.
that's
Just put some
excitement of our week.
motor oil on it. And
Yeah.
some orange juice.
that. Yeah.
All kinds of different stains happening.
I saw that a kid already colored on something. It'd probably wash off. That's just life.
It's just life.
So I tell you about Braxton coloring on my wall before I moved out of the apartment.
With what?
Like to a crayon.
With a crayon?
Like 2 weeks before we moved out.
Whoops.
I was like, Mommy, look what I did. And I'm like, oh,
That's beautiful.
my goodness.
Magic eraser.
Right?
What's that?
I left it, actually. They're going to paint over it anyway.
It's true. That's true.
I did not bother. That might be horrible of me. I'm sorry to my landlord.
If you listen to this podcast, I am sorry.
Apologize.
Sorry, not sorry.
Nice. Yeah, so tonight we thought we'd listen to a little bit of Aubrey's story. Aubrey's she's been with us since the origination of Be Transformed. She was one of the founding members.
Yes.
Founding mothers. Founding yeah, one of the founders of BT. We did the BT class in the living room.
Good times.
Get together and read some Bible. Yeah. How long ago was it you ended up in BG?
It'll be 2 years in September.
It is September.
Oh my gosh.
Or September.
It's been, you can officially say it's been 2 years. Sunday, just for your reference, was the beginning of September.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm crying.
That's amazing. 2 years. Bam.
Yep.
Yeah, so go ahead and give us a little bit of that backstory there.
So I came here from like 4 hours away. I was in a really abusive relationship, was addicted to drugs, probably for like 3 years before I came here. I was in a really place of hopelessness and just really wanted to die. Like I really just wanted God to take me out of this world. I had no hope. I thought I was going to be stuck in this abusive relationship and never have my kids back. I lost custody of them because of drugs. I lost my train of thought. All right. So I tried many times to get away from my ex, and it was always a failed attempt. Like I would go to my mom's or my grandma's, and he would always come after me and take me back and to where they were fed up with me. I even tried to go to Cleveland to my aunt's. I hitchhiked in my bare feet because he took my shoes because he thought that if we lived on a gravel road, so if he took my shoes, I wasn't going to walk like a mile down a gravel road. But I did, and I walked to a truck stop, and I sat there, and I hitchhiked to my aunt's house. But he came after me there, too. Unfortunately, my family and his family are, so they told him where I was.
Jeez.
So,
did they know it was a bad relationship?
it was my cousin who's a drug addict, too. So, I mean, yeah, they didn't care about it.
Yeah.
But drugs.
Yeah.
So then it was like 6 months after that, after the Cleveland incident, that I finally, I had someone who was willing to come get me and bring me to Bowling Green, which I had no idea where Bowling Green even was.
Kentucky.
I just knew I had to go somewhere that was far away and that nobody would know where I was.
Yeah.
So he brought me here. He put me up in a hotel for a week, and I was able to find a domestic violence shelter here in Bowling Green. And I got in there. It was a Saturday, and I knew I had to find a church. I wanted to go to a church because I knew that it was Jesus that saved me out of all that. Because during my abuse and my drug use, like, I had heard, like, some stuff on the internet about Jesus, about a Jesus who rescues and loves sinners and rescues sinners. I didn't know about that Jesus prior to that.
Yeah.
So coming here and getting freed from that, like, I wanted to find a church and learn more about Jesus. So I started going to H2O. I walked on campus to the H2O the next day. And I got there late. It was right at the end of the service because I was lost on campus. It was funny.
And she made it.
I did make it. I was late. But they talked about The Well was starting that night, and I had no idea what any of this stuff was. I'm like, just like, I want to do it.
Yeah.
Sign
me up. So I did. I started The Well that night and met Tiffany as my discipleship partner. Then met you guys and started having Bible studies with you guys. And I've really came from nothing, coming here with the clothes on my back, to now I got custody of my kids back. I got my nursing license back, and I'm working. I just bought a mobile home, and God has really redeemed me from all that darkness of my past. And I want to give other people hope that are in that situation of hopelessness and thinking they can never have more than the life that they're in. That's not true. There is hope, and that Jesus loves them, and God has a plan for their life and a purpose for their life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Story's amazing. Just the failed attempts, but just the knowing that God was going to rescue you and still being willing to keep trying. And
right. And I had no idea coming here. I had no idea where I was going to stay. Like, no idea. I just knew that I needed to go, and I just needed to get away, and God took care of me through that.
Yeah. Who was the so it was interesting, you were saying you had heard a couple things about Jesus or whatever on the internet, like previous to that was like something you kind of like never
No, like, I grew up in a Catholic church when I was little. You know, I went to catechism. I had my first Holy Communion, and then after that we never went back to church. But I don't remember, like, learning about Jesus or anything. Like, I remember, like, Bible stories, like, here and there, but nothing. Like, I've learned so much that I can't believe I never knew, especially, like, going to church when I was little. But, yeah, I think I was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 when we stopped going. So, yeah. Other than I had not been to church up until coming here since then.
Yeah. That's interesting.
what was that like when you had some kind of background? You'd heard about God, or, you know, in the Catholic Church you were learning stories in the Bible, but what was that like when you heard it a different way, like for the first time, basically?
Like, I wanted to know more, I guess, made me hungry, I guess you could say. Like, that you could have a relationship with God, like personal relationship. Like, because I guess before I thought God was just this faraway person that, you know, judges everybody. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know, gave me hope. And then through the things that I've experienced, obviously, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. was the stuff you found on the internet, was that guy that you went to? His
Clayton
thing?
Jennings, yeah. Yes. Like the way he talked about Jesus was like, you could not be like intrigued.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know this guy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's real cool.
So you came across Clayton Jennings online,
Mm-hmm.
and then you also had kind of your own encounters with God.
Yeah. So my brother actually died of a heroin overdose in 2015. So what, like 2 years before I came here, I think it was. And that was really hard. And he's my only like full brother. I have 2 other half brothers, but we have the same mommy and dad. We were 1.5 years apart. So losing him was hard. And after he died, I totally hated heroin and opiates. But I turned to a different alley, I guess, that I thought, well, this won't kill me. And I started using methamphetamines to just get me out of my darkness. It made me feel happy and gave me energy until, of course, you crash. But like in the moment, you're not thinking about the stuff that in your life. I had a hard time with losing my brother, but no, what was the original question you asked me? I forgot.
Oh, you had you'd had your own experiences with God.
Oh.
You heard about Clayton Jennings.
Right.
You heard him online, but then God was speaking to you.
Right. So after a year after my brother died, me and my mom and my other brother went to visit his cemetery grave for the first time. And it was like a cloudy, stormy day. And driving back, like, we had a sunroof, and this hole in the clouds, like, punched through, and the sun was, like, shining on us. Like, I felt the warmth, and I, like, got out my camera, and my brother's yelling at me, like, calling me stupid for taking pictures of the clouds as we're driving down the interstate. But I just felt this warmth and this presence. And so I started taking pictures because the sky looked crazy, and it looked like an angel in the sky, like, and I still have these pictures. And like when I got home and looked at them, in the blur of the tree line, it said, Jesus is alive. Like, and I'm not kidding. Like, I see those words in the tree. And that was another, like, oh my gosh, this is like, Jesus is real. And I felt like he was trying to, like, tell me that. Like, just come to me, you know?
Yeah.
So that was one of my first, like, oh my gosh, and I felt crazy, to be honest. Like, I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you said you got into the drugs to I don't know, kind of mask the darkness. What was the darkness?
I guess just a lot of things from my childhood. Me and my older brother were abused. My dad was in prison for 20 years, so I never had a relationship with my dad. I ended up, every relationship that I've ever been in was toxic, abusive. And I think, like, I felt no worth. And, like, I deserved that kind of life, you know? Like, I didn't know there was better or that I deserved better. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anxiety, depression, for various reasons.
Sure.
It's interesting how self-worth and lack of identity can lead you to feel like you don't deserve
Right.
something better.
Knowing that God sees you as something better and that God does have a purpose for your life and he sees you as his child. Like, and it's funny that you can be so oblivious to that. But all of us, every single one of us, are God sees us that way. You know, we're children of his children.
Yeah. Regardless of the circumstance we're in, or
even if we don't see it.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just like it's a malfunction to not know who you are and why you are. Like you said, like the fact that it was
The emotions are coming for those that can't see.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna get you. Yeah, but there's this guy, Father G, they call him. He's got this group in California. Actually, it's kind of all over the place, but it's called Homeboy Industries, and it's like the largest gang intervention program in the world, and they are kind of in various countries, but yeah, he's just talking about the concept of helping people see that they're exactly what God meant them to be. And just, hanging out with these people and then seeing them really begin to discover that very thing that you can see, right? To start to discover, just kind of like you're talking about, where it's like this stuff was foreign, like hope, people who cared about you, people who didn't want to abuse you, but held you as valuable. I mean, all these guys in this, all these people getting into gangs, they talk about how nobody gets into a gang because it's appealing. Everybody's running from somebody. Everybody's running from something, and it's all about abuse and misuse and all this bull stuff. Bull pucky. But yeah, and I mean, the other thing they say is, everybody's a lot more, than the dumbest thing you've ever done. It tells a story about this one guy. He gets 2 days out of prison, and he's trying to find a job, and he comes into this guy's office. He's like, "Hey man, I can't find a job." And he's like, tattooed on this guy's forehead is "F the world," but like spelled out. And Greg's like, "Man, I think if we really put our heads together on this, we might be able to figure out what the problem is." But yeah, hope, man. Yeah, identity is a real thing, and like the lack of it causes you to get a bit self-destructive, just due to the case that you're missing the essence of who you are and why you are. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, this whole thing kind of gets us into the our topic tonight, which is kind of like the great separation, which Jesus talks about, I think maybe in like Matthew 25, and he talks about when he returns and the angels with him and he sits on his throne. He says all the nations will be gathered in front of him, and the people will be separated, like a shepherd separates sheep from goats. And so the ones on the right, he'll say, come into the inheritance that was prepared for you since before the foundations of the earth were laid. Because when I was sick, you took care of me. Man, it's too much.
The crickets are talking in the background.
Yeah, but when I was in prison, you came and visited me, and when I was hungry, you fed me, and when I was
naked,
you clothed me. He said, whatever you did, and these people are like, whoa, when did we see you like that? He's like, no, man, whatever you did to the least of these, you did unto me, right? And then to the people on the left, he's like, depart from me and go into your, eternal torture, because when I was all these things, you didn't do anything. And then these guys, same response. Whoa, when did we see you like that, right? He's like, no, you don't get it. He's like, whatever you did not do for the least of these, you did not do for me. I think there's a couple interesting concepts in here. And one, it's like you look at how close God is to the brokenhearted. Like he said, no, whatever you did to them, you did to me. And whatever you did not do to them, you did not do to me. Yeah, and two, it's like, who's he talking to? Who's the one that went to the sick? Who's the one that put the clothes on their back? Who's the one that visited him in prison? It was the people on the right? Like sometimes we kind of sit around thinking, well, God will take care of that. Oh man, that place over there looks like shit, but God will take care of that. That's just fine, right? God will sort that out. I got to keep watching TV.
Pray about it.
Let me pray about it.
Right.
Let me pray. I'll fast tomorrow. Got to eat these chips. But yeah. But it was the people. He says, whatever you did is what happened, and whatever you didn't do is what didn't happen. Like just this idea of responsibility and duty. It's you can't push that responsibility back on God, because this clearly depicts what you do is what happens, and what you don't do is what doesn't happen.
Yeah, I don't remember where I heard this, but they were just talking about the concept of waiting for God to tell you if you should do it. And it's like God always wants to help someone. There's if there's an inkling to help someone, if there's an inkling to, I mean, maybe in this case it was like healing or prophecy, but it was just like there's never a time where the Spirit doesn't want to move. So it's like just this concept of like even if the urge doesn't come, obviously there's more that we could and should be doing. But like when the urge comes, it's like there isn't a need to wait for God to clarify, like, should I help that person? Like if it involves anything of helping or building up or, it's like, that's God, that there isn't anything to wait for confirmation on that. Just do it.
Take action.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about it. It gets a little dicey. People are like, well, well, does God really want you to be the person that helps them, or is there somebody else that can help them? It's just like, well, freak, if I gotta hear like some deliberate word from God, like something so crystal. Oh, now you're just all up in confusion. You're in guilt. You're in shame. You're like, freak, was I supposed to? Am I not supposed to? And it's just like total mayhem. Go ahead.
Like just a couple weekends ago, a girl that I knew that I had used drugs with, I happened to see a post of hers that she was in a halfway house and had no clothing, no toiletries, no anything. And so if anybody could send her anything, so, I messaged her, like, what size are you? What do you need? And I took that as a perfect opportunity to share what God had done in my life. And so I gathered up a bunch of clothes for her, toiletries, a devotional and a Bible, and was able to share my story, and it gave her hope. She said she cried, and she said, thank you so much. Your story gave me hope. And I feel like that put like passion inside me. Like that's what I want to do. Like I want to be able to get people out of the darkness that I've experienced. So like, not that we go out and do these things because we feel like it earns like our salvation or anything, but we want to do it because of what's been done for us, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who better to share that than somebody who has lived it? It's not just this like, far off picture that doesn't seem possible. It's like, no, for real, that was me.
Right.
And now look at me.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. Restoration's a real thing. Yeah, I mean, Jesus said in like Luke 6, he was like, I will show you what it is like when somebody comes to me, hears my word, and put it into practice. He's like, I will show you what it is like. It's like this guy who's going to build a house. And before he builds a house, he digs in the ground until he hits rock. Then he lays his foundation on top of that rock, and then he builds his house on top of that foundation. And then when the storms come, that house stands firm. Right? But the person who hears my word but doesn't put it in practice also builds a house, but just sets it right on the ground. And the house is fine until the storm comes, and that thing comes into a giant heap of ruins. But it's like, who are the people who comes to Jesus, right? And I don't know, maybe the next chapter, chapter 7, Jesus is sitting down to eat. This Pharisee had invited him over for dinner, and then this woman comes in, and she's weeping, and she's, washing his feet with her tears and wiping it with her hair and putting perfume on it and kissing his feet. And the host, right, this Pharisee, he's like, shoot. He's talking about Jesus. He's like, man, if that guy was a prophet, he would know, like, he wouldn't let that lady touch him because he would know that she's like such a sinner. And so he said this to himself. And so, which is really funny, because then Jesus answers what he said. Because he said, well, if this guy's really a prophet, then he would know who's touching him. So he answers this guy who didn't say this out loud, and was like, he's like, hey, let me tell you something. The guy's like, okay, teacher, go. He's like, there was a guy who lent money to two people. 500 pieces of silver to one person, 50 pieces of silver to somebody else, and then neither of the people could pay back the debt. So the lender generously and kindly forgave the debts. He said, who is going to love that lender more? And the guy's like, well, I suppose the person who had the bigger debt. Yeah, and Jesus is just saying, he's like, yeah, this lady, right? He's like, I came in here, you didn't offer me water to wash my feet. It's like, you didn't give me oil to anoint my head. He's like, but this lady's washing my feet with her tears. She hasn't stopped putting perfume. He's like, you didn't kiss me when we came in, but she hasn't stopped kissing my feet. He's like, but I tell you, like, this woman, yeah, though her sins were many, have been totally forgiven. And it's just like, these are the people who come. And then these are the people who leave with function, right? Like, he said, I will tell you. It doesn't get any more blatant than this. I will explain to you. I'll paint you a picture of what it is like when somebody comes to me, hears my words, and puts it into practice. These people build a life that's so legit that nothing can ever knock it down, tear it down, and do nothing, right? But the other people who just hear it and they're just, well, whatever, maybe they didn't understand why would you go through all that extra effort to dig in the ground? And, why would you build a foundation? It's already a ton of work to build a house. Let's just slap this baby on the dirt. But it's like the people who come to Jesus, they're the broken, man. They're all of us, right? But then we're the people that step into that redemption, that turn into people who freaking dominate, right? Like couple, I don't know, maybe a chapter later, you got the parable of the farmer who sows, scattering some seeds, right? Some seed falls on the footpath, some in the rocks, some in the weeds, and then some in good soil. And Jesus is explaining this parable, and he's like, each of the places the seed fell were different people, and everybody held on to God's word for a short period of time, except for the last guy, right? The good soil. That guy, he relentlessly held on to that word, and he patiently produced a massive harvest. It's just like the people who come to God become the people who begin to live and function. It's just like there is no nobody's unredeemable. Like there's no limit, there's no line you can cross, there's no hill you can climb that can get you past past God's heart. Yeah, read it.
Yeah, I was reading in Psalms 107 and just that very thing. And the whole chapter is really good, but it's just talking about how, give thanks to the Lord for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Those he redeemed from the hand of the foe, those he gathered from the lands from east and west, from north and south. And it just keeps going on, and it's talking about those who were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. They cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. Goes on further, starting in 10, it starts talking about how there were some that sat in darkness, in utter darkness, prisoners suffering in iron chains because they rebelled against God's commands and despised the plans of the Most High. And then you keep going down. It says, they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness, the utter darkness, and broke away their chains. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind, for he breaks down gates of bronze and cuts through bars of iron. And just that picture of, being in utter darkness and crying out for help, and being like, as soon as they cried out, even in their rebellion, then once they came to realize that they needed God, and you should read that whole chapter. It goes on in different ways and just talks about the way that you can be apart from God, in the sense that they didn't know him. They hadn't, and then they called out for help, and he redeemed them. And just that, right, there's nobody that's unredeemable. There's no situation that's too big. There's no place so far away that you can't cry out to God and he won't redeem you. And even your story where you felt the call, it wasn't instant for you, right, but you were feeling the call, and when you actually got away, yes, and kept going, right, it wasn't just, you didn't just get away from an abusive situation. It could have stopped there for you. Like, you had freedom in the sense that you were no longer being abused, right, but you sought out,
yes,
this
I was
God.
hungry for more. To know God. So.
Yeah, I was thinking about, in addition to this, was you're talking about the parable of the seed, it got me thinking to this concept of, you can't just like sprinkle on God. You can't just add him on top of like your life. That's the life without the foundation. That's the house without any, like, it's just, you just kind of put God there, just slap a little bit here and there and start my day with it, and then, check it off. And I feel like I lived a part of my life like that, where I was a morning devotional, check it off, and then I just kind of go about my day. Where now I feel like when we talk about our days, and it's just like there isn't a where God stops and then we begin. It's like it's all connected. And just the concept that when you have that foundation and you are seeking after your purpose in life and what you have inside of you that you want to bring to people and you want to take out there to bring the hope, like you were talking about from your situation. It's just like that's God. You're living your purpose with God, right? And it's just all connected. There's no separation. There's no put it down over here. I did my morning devotional. It's like it's all intertwined. There's no separation, right? And that's
and you feel whole. Like, I feel like there's all kind of things that temporarily make us think we feel whole, like relationships or drugs. Like, oh, we temporarily are happy or whatever, and it just leads to more brokenness. And the only thing that can make you completely whole is God. Like, all those temporary things just cause more brokenness.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's just like, I don't know, to reference again the Homeboys. They're all just talking about how, grow up in abuse, I don't know, getting into gangs and this and that. But growing up, right, they were taught, hey, you don't tell anybody about anything that's going on, any of this bad stuff. You don't share this with anybody. And then you get into the gangs and they say, hey, you don't share any of your stuff with anybody, right? You just kind of push that stuff down. It's just like these things that kind of create that temporary quote unquote wholeness. It's just like you keep just trying to put like tape over the seal of just the boiling bitterness, brokenness, pain that should have never happened, kind of mayhem. And it's just like you keep just trying to put some tape on it, but until you freaking deal with that junk, you're never gonna get into wholeness. Right. It's like you can't. It seems like you could just run from it, but the problem is wherever you go, it goes, because it's inside of you. So it's like you're not made to foster all that nasty inside of you. But yeah, man, that's where like forgiveness and healing comes from. You know, Jesus quoted Isaiah 61, which went to the tune of, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me to preach the good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, and to proclaim freedom for the captives, to release the prisoners and pull them out of darkness, to declare the year of the Lord's favor and the vengeance of God, to comfort all who mourn in Zion." Right, and it goes on a little bit further, and it says, and these people, right, these are the oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord to display his splendor. It's like these people who were once broken and then made whole. These guys, right? They're like oaks of righteousness. An oak tree is massively dense, super strong hardwood, right? So we're not talking about
pine.
Yeah, little freaking pathetic sissies, right? We're talking about legit, like this foundation that the guy would lay to build his house. He found solid ground underneath the earth to lay his solid foundation on, so that solid foundation is anchored inside the earth to a spot that's not going to shift. And then he anchored his house on top of that. I mean, we're talking about double layered here, people. This junk ain't going nowhere. These are these people that God plans on purpose to do what, man? To display his splendor. Your wholeness is a picture of God's splendor. People are like, oh, no, I'm not any good. No, freaking shut up. Like, your wholeness is a display of God's goodness. And our dumb ideas of what that looks like are just need to stop. You're supposed to be amazing, and it depicts a picture of who God is. And then it goes on to say that these same people who were once broken and then made whole, these guys go on to rebuild the broken cities. These people go on to have massive amounts of influence. These are the people who do something so big, so crazy, that the nations come to them because you are seen by them as priests of the Lord God Almighty, and they will bring you their wealth. It's just like this picture of these people who are so whole that the entire world's like, holy freak, like, we got to go there, right? That's God's idea of redemption.
Yeah, it's thinking about living in function versus malfunction, and just that concept of like when we are in wholeness, like you walk out that in function. Like we don't have to accept these partial realities of I'm just an anxious person. I just have this part of my personality. That's just how I was made. You know, I used to think that there were certain parts of me that's just like, I'm just wired like that. It's like, no, when we actually come into full function, like and just that picture of displaying like in wholeness who God is. It's like we are meant to be that. Like we're not meant to limp along with a crutch or a cane with these things that are, I mean, yes, we all have struggles, but that's not where we stay. And just this concept that like we're made to be in complete wholeness and showing others what that looks like. Like if we're all jacked up, it's the language. Yeah. It's like if we're stuck in a place of like not even getting free from our own struggles, it's like that's not really appealing. And just that and not to say that we can't be real and honest and like, you know, we don't have to look perfect. Not that, but just this concept of like we're all striving to continue to display like in wholeness who God is, and that we can break out of malfunction and live in function.
Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah.
And the process can be messy, but it's a process.
Yeah, well, so a process, right? By definition, it's like there's like a certain amount of time that's got to take place for growth to incur, right? For you to reach whatever it is you're trying to reach. So, I mean, it's like you don't get disqualified when you're in the process, right? I mean, the process means you're in the process. You can't get any more proactive than active. It's like it's not about I'm not really interested in being perfect. I really could care the freak less. And I am not a sinner in need of a savior, right? I'm a son growing in knowledge, understanding, and maturity, learning how God thinks, how to handle situations like he handles them, right? And to freaking dominate in this life. Like, people want to hang out in this idea of like, well, we're just broken, messed up humans. And it's just like, that sucks for you, but I'm not. That's not the message Jesus hands out. And it's like, I won't for any moment of time ever take any of that on. And I was just thinking about this, just these last few articles we've had out here, just kind of like the great contrast. You know, like the contrast between the two guys who are building their house, right? One guy takes the word, builds legit foundation, house stands firm, right? Opposed to the other guy who doesn't use a foundation and his house collapses. The story of the farmer who scatters seed and how only one person held onto that word, and that was the only person who produced a harvest. And when they produced it, it was massive, right? In another parable, it was like 30 to 60 to 100 times more than what was planted. And even this story about the lender, right, who lent 500 pieces of silver to one, 50 to the other. The contrast, right, that the person with a weightier debt had a greater gratitude and tenderness and compassion and relationship with the lender because it was so much more weighty and real and life-altering. And I was just kind of thinking like this great contrast between like somebody who actually takes God's word, right, gets into knowledge and understanding of righteousness, of wholeness, of restoration, of reconciliation, right? This person, right, who taps into identity, begins to see the potential that they have, discover the duties and responsibilities they hold, and then they take massive levels of action to accomplish them, right? These are the people who produce massive harvests, fruit that proves that they're really of God. While on the contrast side, you get the people who never really kind of tap into righteousness and just kind of never really ever believe that they have worth or value. And these people kind of always just kind of chase after God's approval. They chase after this thing they already have as if they didn't have it. And they're just kind of spending all their time chasing after this thing that they kind of don't really have too much of an impact. And it's the great contrast between like the truth of who Jesus is, the truth of why God created the world, the truth of restoration and wholeness that brings you back into who you are meant to be. And then learning to thrive in that, develop that, grow in that, go in the process, but in sonship, right? As children, not as slaves, not as servants, and not as broken, right? People who are whole, right? I mean, Jesus said he came to bind up the brokenhearted. I'm just telling you, this guy's got skills. So, I mean, it's pretty insulting to assume that you're still broken. When this guy came to reconcile you, right? Reconciliation is based on the premise that before you're born again, your relationship is not what it once used to be, meaning there was a used to be. You used to be in right standing. You used to have identity. You used to have purpose. You used to have, these responsibilities and duties, and that reconciliation brought you back into it. And I'm just saying, like, he's got some skills, right? He gets you back into that right position pretty good. Restoration looks like function, and function looks like benefits. Function looks like things work. It's the proper use. It's the reason behind why something was created, how to use it how it's created to use, and then bam, you withstand the storms. You produce a harvest that's freaking massive. You've got this tenderness towards God that's freaking legit. Why? Because that's function. We belong to a God who created all things on freaking purpose. It wasn't on accident. It wasn't on a whim. I'm telling you, man, he's a God of function. And we display who it is that made us. So I say, man, with our lives, let us prove that we follow a God of function. In Jesus' name. My good peoples, until next time, peace.
Peace.